Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Before we get started, just wanted to remind everybody to support us if you have a chance or if you can. Even $1 helps, and we have a link in the description to a website called Buy Me a Coffee. It's just a way to donate to us and support us. Again, any amount is helpful so that we can keep putting out content. And there's also other ways for you to support us in the show notes to this podcast or on YouTube in the description. In today's podcast, I wanted to talk about whether or not Big Four experience is necessary. Recently had a question from somebody that said, I'm still a student and I have an internship soon. I don't want to work crazy hours, but so far the public accounting firm told me they manage it well. I don't know if I'd want to continue with public accounting or go to private because of better hours. I also heard public accounting experience is valuable. Is it true? Why not just start from private company and move up instead of public for 2 years, then try to find a senior position? And this is a pretty good question. It made me think back to why this is true, because in my experience, working in private or industry is extremely valuable. And I feel like you learn way more depending on the type of company that you work for. If you work in like a small department of a big company, then you can learn so much more because you're in charge of so much more. You're actually booking the entries yourself. You're working with the controller or the tax director directly. You're looking in the trial balance and the financial statements, and you're in charge of booking entries. And you just learn the financial process. You learn about the quarterly close and the year-end close, and you learn about the timing of all of that. Where in the Big Four accounting firms, if you're in audit or tax, you're usually just worried about your side of it. If you're in audit, you're worried about your request list and then your samples. And if you're in tax, you worry about your request list as well, and then getting your client their various deliverables. But you're worried about your side. You're not worried about their side, and you don't learn as much about the company necessarily as you would if you work for them. Because in public accounting, you have multiple clients, so you can't learn a whole bunch about all of your clients if you have multiple clients. And I mean, don't get me wrong, you can, but a lot of the times you're given so much work that you don't have enough time to learn about your client. And you definitely aren't making journal entries for the most part. Now, there are engagements where you are preparing the work for the client to book into their financial statements, but those are really rare because those have a lot more risk. But with that being said, why do you need public accounting experience? Well, it depends on a lot of different factors. But for the most part, you're going to need Big Four accounting experience, not necessarily because you're going to learn a lot more, because it really depends on your situation, how much you're going to learn in the Big Four accounting firms. But you're going to need Big Four accounting firm experience or public accounting experience because it's going to help you get more senior positions quicker. Because if you look on LinkedIn or Indeed, they always value public accounting experience. And when you're a junior person, they want at least a couple years or a year of public accounting experience. But as you look at more and more senior positions, they typically want you to have 10 years of experience. Now, they don't really necessarily tell you how much of that they want from public accounting, but when they say, I want 10 years of experience, they also say, along with public accounting experience. Working in, a lot of them have Big Four. They want Big Four experience. Requirement for Big Four experience has been around for forever. And it's typically there because they know if you have multiple years in the Big Four, you can deal with really tough situations, managerial situations, and tough engagements. And they also hope that if you worked in the Big Four accounting firms, you've seen multiple clients. And you can use all the information that you've seen from those multiple clients and bring that to the company that you're moving to. So if you're trying to be a tax director or a CFO, they're hoping that you've seen enough situations, including your experience at the Big Four, that you have best practices that you can bring to that company. Because if you work in enough clients in the Big Four accounting firms and you work in the same line of service and industry, then you get pretty familiar with standard procedures of what's normally done. And if there's not a normal procedure, you at least have a general idea of what most companies do, and you can blend those approaches together to come up with the best ideas for the company that you're going to be hired by. But also, there's just a lot of things, the Big Four. There's a lot of personnel issues. There's usually multiple members on a team. And if you work in private slash industry, you can work in a really small department and not deal with that many people. And also, if you work in a small enough accounting department, HR might not be that big. Your teams might not be that big. So you might not deal with tough situations. You might not have to push back on your boss. You might not have to delegate work, especially if you start an industry right off the bat. Because if you start an industry right off the bat, then you might be the lowest person on the totem pole. And it might be years and years until you get a promotion. And since it'll take you a while to get a promotion, it might be years until you delegate work. So those are pretty much the reasons that people want Big Four or public experience. Now, is it necessary to go to the Big Four for your own personal knowledge? I don't know. I think you learn a lot when you go into private. And if you actually like dedicate yourself to learn in private, you can learn a lot. And what you learn by being in private, I feel like you can utilize more to get a CFO or executive position if you leverage it correctly. And you can leverage a private or an industry position into getting a Big Four job. And the Big Four really value private or industry positions because you bring all that knowledge that you learned. But also, if you choose to work in private or industry, you should join industry groups and still go to conferences and learn under other people in the industry, because then you can leverage that network and then you can bring that to the Big Four. And another reason the Big Four value people from industry is because if you're leaving a company to go to Big Four, what that typically means is that you're leaving a client of the Big Four to join the Big Four. So that means that you can help the Big Four market to that company you just left. Or maybe you're friends with other people in industry, and then those are potential clients of the Big Four as well. So that's another advantage of starting an industry and then maybe moving to the Big Four later on in your career. So there's a lot of ways to look at it, but one of the main reasons people work in Big Four or public, or the reason I think it's necessary, is if you want an executive or higher level position later on in your career. Because just look at the jobs online, and a lot of them request Big Four experience, whether or not they know it's valuable or not. Because you have to remember, a lot of these people that put up these accounting posts, these accounting jobs, are just copy pasting. And they're copy pasting from larger companies. And a lot of those larger companies just require Big Four experience. So that's the update for today. To get future updates, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and support us financially through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes if you get a chance. Otherwise, just subscribe to our YouTube channel. And the reason it's important to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because you can easily search through our videos. You can search through our playlist that we put together. It just makes it easier to search the content. Thanks for listening.